Everyone ready?
This is the SEC Insider Hit. Presented by your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Go local. Go with a home team.
Well, good morning. Welcome in. We've got the Eagles and the Chiefs, Glendale, Arizona, and plenty of Mississippi connections. We always have that, don't we? It's incredible. Small state, but the representation is everywhere. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Southern Miss, Gardner Minshew from wherever you want to go, East Carolina to, well, JUCO, Troy for a hiccup, JUCO, East Carolina, and then Washington State. But plenty of Mississippi flavor. And, Fletcher Cox is going for Super Bowl ring number 2. So is Chris Jones. A.J. Brown, number 1. Willie Gay, number 1. Gardner, number 1. So Gainwell. We'll see. Quez Watkins. There's all kinds of guys. We want to welcome in our friend Tom Luginbill. This SEC Insider Hit is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your car and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Tom Luginbill joining us on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, and he joins us on the Patron Tequila guest line. Are you in Dallas, Lugs?
Not yet. I leave later today to head to Dallas for about 3 days of rehearsals and all those sorts of things.
I got a question for you. We were talking Super Bowl parties, and I wanted to get your thoughts. I don't know if you'll be traveling this year, but when you're not, first of all, how do you consume the Super Bowl? And when do you consider it a party? Does it have to be double digits, like 10-plus people, or is 4 couples a party? How does Lugs look at that?
I think if it's a party, it's got to be 10-plus. You got to be double-digit humans to consider it a party. But I got to be honest with you. I'm a pretty bad, Super Bowl partier. I'm more often than not sitting on my sofa, chilling out, hanging out, just watching the game, and it might just be me and my wife or my kids, and rarely do I ever go to or host or have any type of party. I guess that's kind of lame, right?
No, I'm the same way.
That's the reality.
I'm the same.
You are?
We do some good food. I've got my beverage of choice. I can usually keep Wendy and my daughter there for at least the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game. Okay. And then they'll come back for halftime, depending on who's playing, right? Musician, artist, whatever. But I'm the same way. The idea of I could never host a party. That would mean I had to I do enough of that in life and this show and so on. So I'm with you, bud. I hang out on the couch, do what we do and watch.
Yeah. Kind of boring.
Well, but in my world, it's awesome, but I get what you're saying. I do love hearing from listeners on the Monday after on Who's Hungover. That's always fun, and we do a little hit on that.
Hungover? Do you need to ask that question?
No, I really don't. All right, Patrick Mahomes. Talk about Mahomes hurt. He doesn't have Tyreek Hill. I know Kelsey's either the best or one of the best with Gronk and some others. And the supporting cast is a little bit different. Obviously, their D played very, very well. But what was your takeaway when they had to have it and what Mahomes was able to do in the second half, Luke?
He's just so crafty. You look at the plays that he makes, and it's you could sit there as a coach. You could be in the meeting room. You could be on the field at practice. You could be on the board. And there's no way to actually practice or lay out a plan for those improvised, unscripted plays. You got to figure if you're Andy Reid, at least probably 5 times, probably at least 5 moments a game, you're going to have that play that looks like it's dead in the water, or it's going to be a 12-yard loss, or it's just going to be an incompletion. We're going to play the next down. And then this guy just pulls a rabbit out of a hat. I'm sitting there watching him, Bo, and I try to think who does he remind you of? What, has there ever been anybody? And I'm like, okay, is it Fran Tarkenton? I'm trying to think, like, who in the NFL has ever made some of those plays where it's not there to be made, and then he does it, and it happens in the blink of an eye? And I can't think of anybody else in NFL history.
No, I can't. And you're right on Fran Tarkenton, but that was such a different era. And man, I loved Minnesota and Ahmad Rashad and that crew. But so when you see him, you know, the way that he pitches the ball and does all that stuff, and I think we thought, oh, he won't do that as much eventually. No. He does it on the biggest stage, and he does it effectively and efficiently, but yet that's not how the position is. You played Power 5 quarterback. That's not how the position is coached, Tom.
Well, no, you can't coach those things. You're basically, when you're coaching the quarterback to avoid negative plays, you know, you're trying to talk about, all right, throwing the ball away, live to play the next down. If they're in man-to-man defense, part of your progression now becomes take off and run because there's nobody to account for you. But, like, how are you supposed to account for or get him and drill it during practice or come up with something that you are going to say, okay, well, if this happens, do this? Well, it's so out of the norm. You get the guy, all of a sudden he flushes from the pocket, and then he takes the ball, puts it in his left hand, all right, and shovels it forward. He's a right-handed guy. It's like, where is this stuff coming from? Like, the instincts and the aptitude are at a level that I've never seen before. Like, I don't understand any of that stuff. Like, it's so remarkable to see and so fun to watch that. And I was saying to somebody the other day, I was like, man, look at the young quarterbacks in the AFC. You know, like, the AFC is set up at quarterback for the next decade. I mean, it's going to be the NFC. They got to start doing. They got to start bringing in some quarterbacks to that side of the league, because right now that's where the AFC's got a huge advantage.
We've got guys like Nakobe Dean, Chris Jones, A.J. Brown, Willie Gay, Big Play Slay, and many more that are in this game with Mississippi ties. It's pretty incredible. Some of these guys are going for their second ring, which is we all know how hard it is just to get to the championship games, much less win Lombardi trophies. So Tom Luginbill joining us, national college football analyst with ESPN. So, Lugs, I'd like for you to handicap the Eagles for me against the Chiefs. And you got to see Jalen Hurts. You knew all about him in high school. You got to see him play at Bama in Oklahoma. It was a little bit of a slow process at the NFL level. So they ran into the Giants, and they rushed for like 1 billion yards in the first weekend, so he didn't really have to do a whole lot there. Yesterday, 121 yards through the ground. Once Brock Purdy was hurt, they
what
just
a
had
bummer,
to –
right? It was such a bummer.
It really was. It looked like he just shredded his elbow. Talk about, you know, what the Eagles' supporting cast is amazing. Their offensive skill players are insane with Devontae and AJ among others. But handicap it for me as far as what Hurts and them have to do to, you know, beat the champs.
You know, it's interesting. I think, you know, a lot of people have made the statement that, you know, you could plug anybody at quarterback there with their skill and they'd be doing what Jalen Hurts is doing. I think that's unfair. I think that Jalen Hurts has proven his worth, what he brings athletically. I mean, how about the play that he made yesterday to get out of the end zone to avoid the safety? And it was Bosa that was tackling him. He basically was so strong, Bosa couldn't keep him in the end zone. That stood out to me without question. But I think that when you get to the Super Bowl, when you get to this level, it's about mistakes. It's about minimizing mistakes. The two teams are the two best teams. You've got really good quarterback play. You've got defensive front people. And it's just like we talk about in college all the time. You look at both teams up front. You look at how they're built, how they're put together. I think it's about mistakes. And to be honest with you, I think that puts more pressure on Jalen Hurts because Patrick's been there before. All right. He's been in that limelight. He's been in that moment. And he's doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I think the pressure goes on Jalen Hurts to have to really show up and be at his best. I mean, his absolute best. And you're right, their offensive skill, that catch Devontae Smith made yesterday was ridiculous, and even though it wasn't quite a catch. But between him and A.J. Brown, and they're really, really good. The question is, if Kansas City gets hot and starts rolling and starts going up and down the field, can Philadelphia match it? Can they go tit for tat? And every time something happens, can they go a series where they don't punt? Or if KC scores, can they answer with at least a field goal every single time? Or do they have a 3-and-out? Or do they have to punt? I don't think they can afford to do that. That's how good KC is on offense.
How did two guys – we're visiting with Tom Luginbill with ESPN on the Out of Bounds show. He joins us on the Patron Tequila guest line. How did Chris Jones and A.J. Brown drop to the second round?
I have no idea. Is that unbelievable? And especially Chris, just because of the position he plays. Like, you can sometimes see it at wideout just because there's so many of them. But, those two guys are flat-out difference makers. So is Fletcher. Nobody can block Fletcher.
Well, thank you. You just teed me up. Compare the way that Chris so they literally went back-to-back in Starkville, Luke's, and Mullen and that whole crew were lucky to get 3 years of Fletcher and 3 years of Chris Jones. Compare the way Chris Jones plays, defensive line, to the way Fletcher Cox plays.
Well, Chris is so much more of a physical interior force, and Fletcher's more of, I think, a five-technique edge guy. They're both got really, really heavy hands, physical at the point of attack, can convert speed to power in the sense that if they're coming off with initial explosiveness, and then all of a sudden they can take that, get their hands on the inside, and just walk people back to the quarterback. But I think Fletcher could probably play a few more spots maybe than Chris. I think Chris is just kind of your true interior guy.
Okay. All right. Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We're going to switch gears with you. I want to talk Project QBs in the NFL draft.
Okay.
Which one do you think could be an impact starter sooner than later if they have to be? Hendon Hooker, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, or Anthony Richardson? Luke's?
Of those guys, I would say probably C.J. Stroud. There's been very, very, very few guys that have come out of that offensive system that Hendon Hooker's coming out of that have had any type of success in the National Football League. So I'm going with the percentages there. I do not understand the Will Levis hype. I do not understand the Anthony Richardson hype. So I would go with the most accomplished of the group. But I'm going to give you a guy that I think is really, really good, and that is the Jake Haener kid at Fresno State. He is really, really good. And, he's down to Senior Bowl this week. I think he's going to be a guy that is going to see his stock rise. But I would go with the most productive guy, and that's been C.J. Stroud. I don't understand who's advising Anthony Richardson. I understand he's big. I understand he has a strong arm. I understand he can run. He's been marginally productive at best, and hasn't played a lot of football. And you could almost say the same thing about Will Levis. And I understand that everybody's looking for the next Josh Allen. I get it. Guy's got a rocket for an arm, good athlete, the whole 9 yards when we're talking about Will Levis. He's often injured. He's unbelievably erratic, and he turns the ball over. And I don't know if it's NFL ego or what it is that they're thinking, okay, well, we can get this guy fixed up and this and that. I'm not so sure you change the stripes on a tiger. I could be out of my tree, but I think he's way more like Jake Locker than he is like Josh Allen.
Okay. Fair enough. Wow. Let's take quarterback play back to Oxford. You're really, really familiar with both Spencer Sanders and Jackson Dart. I can't figure out how this is all going to work, but
I can't either.
I guess it will. And maybe Walker Howard, really makes a run at those two, but those two just have so much PT under their belt.
Yeah.
If you had to handicap it right now, if I made Tom Luginbill make a wager on it, how do you see it between Sanders and Dart?
I would probably say it would be Sanders, Dart, and Howard would be the order that I think would come out. Just because Spencer has played. I mean, guy's thrown for almost 10,000 yards, and he's a warrior, man. He plays hurt. He plays injured. He's just one of those guys you can depend on. Really, really good athlete. He's kind of seen it all, right? And I think, this move to me is a signal to Jackson Dart that you have to be more consistently productive. I mean, that's the whole reason you go out and you do this is because you're sending a message to the quarterback you had this past year that he's got to be better. And if he's not going to be better, he's going to get beat out. And, hopefully that lights a fire under him a little bit and gets him going. But if it doesn't, Spencer Sanders will go right past him just because he's played so much football.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. So Dart's already transferred once, but we all know that kids can transfer more than once because nobody wants to get in any kind of court of law or any kind of jurisdiction or da-da-da-da-da. The NCAA's not touching anything anymore. I mean, let's just say by practice 13 or 14, Tom, maybe Dart feels like, dang, Lane is going to go with Spencer Sanders. You think Dart makes a move in the summer?
He can't. He can only make a move during the windows.
Oh, I'm sorry, during May. May 1 through 15.
Oh, yeah. So you're saying he sees the writing on the wall at the end of spring football and all this and that?
Yeah.
Potentially. Yeah, potentially. But again, I want to see how competitive he is. I mean, if he's truly competitive, then Spencer Sanders will have a hard time beating him out because he's talented.
I think so, too.
Yeah, he's really talented. So, but that's a really good question because that's when this next window is going to be very, very telling for a lot of players when they get through winter conditioning and they get through spring football and you start to kind of see that depth chart going up each and every day of where we're lining up today. You're going to be 1 today, but you're 2 tomorrow, and you're number 1 tomorrow, and you're 2 today, and all those sorts of things. And what does he do at the end of that? I think that's going to be very intriguing to watch that unfold.
All right. What do you make of Stetson? I think Stetson Bennett is a fringe backup in the NFL. So I think you dropped Chase Daniel on us. I can't remember a couple of weeks ago, but let's just say it works out. I mean, heck, Josh Johnson. I forgot about him until last night. And he's hung around for 14 seasons. Good Lord,
unbelievable!
I know, and made a ton of money. I get how the Gardner Minshew's are going to hang around and can spot start and maybe even start a chunk of games or a year or two in the NFL. Stetson, I'm not totally convinced, but I don't know what you know. Him getting arrested, you just kind of brush that off. That'll dissipate by April 15th, April 20th. Where are you on that, Luke's?
I think it all depends on the circumstances and as they unfold. What transpired, what led to it. Was it wrong place, wrong time? Because public intoxication is. I've got a buddy who's a retired police officer, and he said, you've got to, in order to get arrested for that, you've got to be doing something that really makes a scene, right? I mean, you got to be in some type of situation that is garnering attention that leads to the police actually being called or being in the presence. So, not good, but let's see how it unfolds. I actually think I think he was wrong to decline the Senior Bowl invite. I think he needed the Senior Bowl. That's just my personal opinion. I think it would have helped him. But I think he'll end up getting drafted maybe 5th round or so. And, like I said, I mentioned Chase Daniel. I mentioned Colt McCoy. You mentioned, Gardner Minshew. If those guys can do that for that amount of time, there's no question Stetson Bennett can. I think that he has a future in the NFL. And whether it's as a starter, whether it's as a journeyman, like you mentioned with Josh Johnson, there's going to be a place on a roster for a guy like that.
Okay. That's a good point on the Senior Bowl, Luke's right down in Mobile, just 3 hours from us this week. Why would you decline that invite?
I really don't know. I don't know if it's it doesn't want people. They don't want people to see just how short he is or this thing. Well, they're eventually going to find out. You're not hiding it forever. So, whatever it is you are, for lack of a better phrase. And I just think the opportunity to go down there and make an impression, give people a sense of how good you are from an X's and O's standpoint. What's your personality like? How are you in the huddle? There were a lot more positives than negatives by him attending that. That was really surprising to me.
I agree. We'll leave it there. Tom Luginbill on the Patron Tequila guest line. Have a good week in Dallas. We'll talk soon, my man.
Will do. Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
Eagles-Chiefs in Glendale, Arizona. And, he continues to do freaky stuff on the field, and that is Patrick Mahomes limping around and playing the quarterback position, not the traditional way that, Blake, you wouldn't have any idea. You've been able to see much better quarterback play as a youngster and adult. It was definitely in a box, in a phone booth, 70s, 80s. Well, I don't remember the 80s when I was growing up. And now all of a sudden you've got guys doing some pretty cool stuff. On the flip side, Jalen Hurts hasn't had to have that big moment yet to get the Eagles to the Super Bowl, which is rare. More power to the Eagles, but they ran all over the Giants and shut them down on offense. And then Brock Purdy, who was already the third-string guy and somewhat limited, gets hurt early, as you know.
Yep.
And so he's threw for 121 yards.
Yeah,
they just did what they needed to do.
I got to disagree a little bit with Tom Luginbill on his prediction for the Super Bowl, which we have 2 weeks to get into. But I don't think the Chiefs are just going to walk up and down the field and score points. I don't think I know for a fact it's not the Chiefs offense that we saw the last 4 years because you don't have Tyreek Hill. But I think this could be a lot similar to 23-20, that AFC title game. I don't think this is going to be a barn burner shoot. You're talking about two good defensive lines. The Eagles, all year, Steve Palazzolo has told us the only team better than the Eagles in the front was the 49ers. The Eagles are right there in terms of that front defensive, whatever you want to say, 5, 6, 7 guys. I think the Chiefs showed you they can get after the quarterback too. I don't expect this to be a shootout. I expect this to be a grueling kind of who doesn't make mistakes, who can get you over the hump in the red zone, which we saw last night. The Bengals couldn't score touchdowns in the red zone.
And I think Hurts has to go for north of 50, maybe even 60 yards on the ground.
Yeah. Mahomes is the guy. He's been there before. This is Super Bowl number 3 now.
Yeah.
So,
Out of Bounds, brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. For excellent customer service, bundle your car and home and save with your Farm Bureau agent. Favrates.com, F-A-V-E, favrates.com to get a quote. Basically in a hiccup. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Straight ahead. When is it a Super Bowl party? Does it have to be double-digit people in the house? Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9.